Hello, and welcome to a video lecture for Mr. Moser's 8th grade U.S. history class. Today's video lecture is about Manifest Destiny. This is one of a several-part video series where we will look and examine how the United States was able to acquire territories that will allow it to stretch from sea to shining sea. The textbook reading for this particular video lecture is found on page 354, which is the introduction to Manifest Destiny. There are two guiding questions that we are going to be addressing today in the video lecture. What is meant by Manifest Destiny? And then what are the two major themes to Westward Expansion? Towards the end of our unit on Westward Expansion, a time period of Westward Expansion in 1872, an American artist named John Gast painted this following painting called American Progress. I want you to take a moment here to kind of look at the painting and see what are some things that you observe in the painting. What are some people that you see? What are some objects? What are the animals in the picture? And then what are some of the actions that are happening? I'm going to give you a second here to pause the video and see if you can help yourself identify some of the people, the objects, and the actions. I'll catch you when you come back. So what were some things that you noticed about John Gast's painting? Did you notice that it's got some unique kind of coloring to it? There seems to be a lot of light over here where there's this city and town, and as the painting comes across, it's darker over here in the mountains and the more wilderness area. That was all done on purpose. You see, the city represented American progress and civilization, technology, advancements, and then on the more darker side of the painting, it's the more unknown. It's the wilderness. It's an area that's very uncivilized. It needs improvement. Did you notice a large floating lady with a toga on the painting? You probably couldn't miss her, right? She's stabbed right in the middle of the painting. Who is she? Well, she's not really an angel. Actually, she's known as Columbia, which is sort of our first mascot as a nation, if you want to say. On her forehead, you might have noticed a star. That star is a representation known as the Star of Empire. This idea that the United States is expanding its land and territory, creating a vast empire as a nation. Did you notice her arm? She has a book. It's kind of hard to make out, but if you look carefully, it does say school book. This represents American smarts, our intelligence as a nation, our education, and being able to be thinkers as well as doers. Did you notice the wire she has clinging onto? That wire kind of stretches all the way back to the city as she's floating across the painting. That wire represents the telegraph wires. Telegraph wires was a form of early communication that you would be able to send a message. Think of it kind of like sending a tweet today, except back then they would use Morse code, and you would send an electrical signal using dots and dashes, and each dot and dash would represent a letter, which would then correspond to a word, which would allow you to send a short message very quickly over a great distance, extremely fast. Those wires helped unite this very large and expanding nation. Did you notice any other people in the painting? There were miners in the lower part of the miners or having pickaxes and shovels as they were heading out to the west, probably looking for things like gold and silver and some of these different mineral rushes that take place in the 1800s. Did you notice the covered wagons? Thousands of pioneers are going to travel across the Western Territory and head west looking for lands and new opportunities. Did you notice the trains? These trains are going to bring additional people as Americans began to move west. There are also homesteaders and farmers that were plowing the earth and making it a place where they could grow crops. And of course, there's the large cities with the sailboats in the far right side. Did you see anybody else in the painting? Did you see the Native Americans in the painting? Did you notice what they were doing? It seemed as if they were fleeing this progress. There are also animals in this painting as well. Animals like the buffalo, a bear, and an elk. It seemed as if these animals and these Native Americans were fleeing the progress of American expansion, as almost they're being chased away from this movement and traveling west. So, what does this painting help represent? Well, it represents an idea known as manifest destiny.
What are you doing? What's it look like we're doing? It's manifest destiny. You can't fight it, neither can I. Go! More dynamite!
In the time of American history throughout the 1800s, the United States is going to undergo a massive expansion effort west as it picks and adds territories. Manifest destiny is the belief that the United States had the duty, the right to spread across the continent. That's what destiny means, right? If something is destined, it means it's meant to happen. There's no stopping it. It was just preordained. It was supposed to be. It was just supposed to happen that way. And for a lot of Americans, they felt that it was their destiny to take over and occupy majority of the continental United States. And so we think about this idea of manifest destiny. You can't stop it, and neither can I. It's supposed to happen. America was supposed to gain all this land and all this territory. So what are some of the big themes that we're going to be exploring as we study Westward Expansion in this unit? Well, there are two big themes to Westward Expansion. One is America is going to get larger. We're going to add on territory. We're going to add on land. And sometimes that land will be added on through very peaceful means, through signing treaties with other countries and other people. Sometimes this land will be acquired or picked up through war and conflict. So one way or the other, America is going to get larger. We're going to add land and territory. Westward Expansion is also a story about people and how people are going to be impacted. Now, some people are going to be impacted in very positive ways. You could almost argue that they become winners of this story of expansion. People like homesteaders and ranchers and cowboys and miners are going to be flooding out to the west and taking advantage of the land and the resources that are out there. But there are going to be some groups that are going to lose in this confrontation, like Native Americans who lived here for generations, thousands of years, who are going to have their stories greatly impacted in very negative ways as America expands to the west. So America in the 1800s, at the end of the early years of a republic, now that we have a nation, a republic built on by our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, this land of the original 13 states, the original 13 colonies, is beginning to be added now. We now have 16 total states by the turn of the century in the 1800s. 3 new states are added. Vermont, Kentucky, and Tennessee are picked up. So here we have Kentucky, here's Tennessee, and here's Vermont. The new nation's capital, Washington City, the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. is finally established in 1791, though it will take until the late 1790s and the early 1800s for the majority of the government to get moved to the nation's capital. There's also territories where additional Americans are beginning to move into. The Indiana Territory, the Ohio Territory, and the Mississippi Territory, which will eventually become states in their own right in the early 1800s. So between 1800 and 1853, what was the original boundaries of the United States established by the Treaty of Paris after the end of the American Revolutionary War, America is going to get expanded. We are going to add territory. We're going to acquire territories. And these are the 6 territories that we are going to be picking up and the stories that we're going to be telling on how those territories were added to the United States. We have number 1 here, probably the largest swath of land known as the Louisiana Purchase. We will talk about Florida. We're going to talk about Texas. We're going to talk about the Oregon country. We're going to talk about the war with Mexico that takes place in the 1800s that leads to the Mexican Cession, all this land here in the southwestern parts of today's United States. And then we have this little tiny strip of land called the Gadsden Purchase, and we're going to be looking at how that piece of land was added and why it was added to what becomes known as the 48 continental states of the United States of America, the big part of the United States. You may have noticed there's 2 states that are not listed up here, Alaska and Hawaii. We'll talk about their story at a later date. So it's manifest destiny. You can't stop it, and neither can I. We are expanding west. We are going to be telling their stories on how the United States got this land and territory. So let's get ready to learn more about this expansion to the west. Thanks for listening. As always, if you have questions, please come and talk to me.